Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name's Dave McRae. Welcome to episode 336 of McRae Live. The date today is Wednesday, June the 11th, 2025, 7:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I am joined on this episode by filmmaker, comic book writer, actor, astronaut, philanthropist, billionaire. Have I got it all right, Eric? Have I got it all right?
Yeah. Listen. From your mouth to God's ears for the astronaut and the billionaire part.
Okay, perfect. I am joined, of course, by Eric Schaeffer. Thank you for joining me here on the show today, Eric. I really appreciate it. I wanted to have you on because obviously you have some wonderful experience in the entertainment business, having been involved in it for many, many, many years. And I like your intro for your Kickstarter, which is basically, it makes me laugh every time I watch it, which is, I think I know that guy. I know what he's done, and I hate that guy. Or I don't know that guy. I don't care what he's done. And whatever else you said, I think it was just brilliant. It was just a lot of fun. But wanted to have you on today because you've launched a Kickstarter for this new comic that you are doing. You're off to a terrific start. But this is really cool. And I know this is a little unorthodox for some of my viewers out there. We're usually talking about horror movies and Halloween and Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and things like that. But I think this is kind of a really cool comic that you're doing. And it's right up my alley. It may be right up the alley of some of my viewers as well. It's got a horror component to it for sure. It's got some satire to it, which I think is really cool. And of course, your career in the entertainment business as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a director. Some people have probably seen some of your movies, but may not have known it or may not recognize you. But I will let you sort of introduce yourself and kind of talk a bit about who you are and what has brought you to this moment of acting like animals. That's what I want to know. Oh, and by the way, before Eric begins, if you hear a bit of like a slight sort of reverb from Eric, or kind of sounds like there's like a little bit of a reverb, we've tried to work it out. I don't think it's too distracting. It might come in and out a little bit. We've worked on the audio, but it is what it is for right now. Just so you know, we are aware of it, and so the chat room is not filled up with reverb. Anyway, Eric, the floor is yours.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it. I'm in this room because for anybody that has kids, they know I was like, okay, Daddy's going up to the echo chamber,
right,
so that you guys can watch TV. Honey, I can't talk right this second.
But Daddy, Mommy's here for a second.
Mommy's here. Okay, you go down and talk to her. Thank you for letting me know.
Oh, hilarious, my goodness, adorable.
Thank you, but that's literally why I'm up here, because this is a room in the house that the kids will not come into. But of course,
that was not planned, by the way, folks. That was like a sitcom in and of itself. And the way your daughter was just like, "Mommy, such and such." Well, you go tell Mommy, okay, and just leaves. It's brilliant. You know what I mean?
It's adorable. She came just to tell me that Mommy was home. And mommy being home was so that we wouldn't be disturbed.
Right.
So
gotcha.
Forgive me for anybody who's like, oh, I have kids.
Yeah.
And if you have kids, you're like, of course.
Exactly.
But thanks for having me, Dave. And listen, it's a big question. I don't want to just go on a whole diatribe. We have like some time to talk, so we'll separate it with interstitial things. But like the comic itself, the thing about that you said it in the video, it's like I have that experience. I've been making movies, it's scary to say, in 4 decades. I made my first movie in 1994 called My Life's a Turnaround. It was beginning of the sort of full-fledged indie boom,
Yes.
She's Gotta Have It, Spike Lee, Brothers McMullen, Go Fish, it was all happening. And our film, Kevin Smith, and Clerks. And so that film got a little traction, a little notoriety. At that point, I had a friend who made TV shows on at Warner Brothers, and at that point, film people didn't make TV shows because it was like the little brother the scorned little brother. So we went in, we had this little indie film and went into Warner Brothers, the head of Warner Brothers, and they're like, I'd love to do a TV show. They're like, really?
Yeah.
And they basically bought it in the room, gave us like a pilot. They bought the pilot, sold it to Fox. I walked into Fox. I said, they have like a board where they have little index cards with all the shows in the week.
Right.
And I pointed to Sunday night between The Simpsons and Married with Children. And I said, I want that spot. And everybody laughed and said, sure you do.
Right.
Because that's like their coveted spot.
Yes.
Cut to, long story short, we shoot the pilot, they pick it up and give us that spot.
Amazing. And
So, like,
is that the sitcom that was on Fox?
Yeah, it was called Two Something. The reason I paused is because we launched it as Two Something, and then it got halfway in after 9 episodes.
Yeah.
They did a contest to rename it because they thought that would be really cute.
Right.
So we got a Bible, a New York phone book full of names. The meanest ones were the funniest.
Yeah.
You know, give them money for their second movie and they'll walk.
Right.
You know, like,
yes,
sissy art fags. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
like really bad things. Anyway, but the point is that I just thought it was super easy. After 10 years of driving a taxi cab in New York, writing for 50 hours a week and driving for 50 hours a week, just for people out there who like, work ethic is different in younger people, just is. Not all their fault because they live in the world they live in, right?
that's it.
So when you can make a movie on this,
It's very different.
and it's very different. So,
Yeah.
but when I was coming up in the 90s, you were so grateful to be able to be on a movie set as carrying cable, grunting water,
Yeah.
like whatever you had to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, I worked my ass off for 10 years, drove a cab, was getting really sad and disillusioned because I couldn't get a job. I wrote 40 screenplays, was sending them out, couldn't get an agent, couldn't get anything. And then I was going to quit, at least for a time. I was going to say, you know what? It's so painful
Yeah.
to my heart to work this hard and just not get anything.
That's right.
So I said, but then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make a little movie. I'm going to move home at 30, cobble together a few $1,000s, found a friend who felt the same way. We got together like $17,000 and shot My Life's in Turnaround, got the rest of $200,000 from a guy named John Pearson, who wrote a book about all the movies he funded, which were all the movies you've heard of in the 90s
Right.
that I listed. And we were off and running. And I never have had to drive a cab since. That was 1992 we shot. 94 it came out.
Right.
So, you know, I've had the career so far of an independent filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and you've worked with you've worked with Scarlett Johansson, you've worked with Julia Roberts. I mean,
No, not Julia Roberts.
So, it wasn't Julia
Sarah
Roberts?
Jessica Parker.
Sarah Jessica Parker. Excuse me. Sarah Jessica Parker.
Great actress, slightly different.
Right. But excuse me, Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah.
And you've worked with, some name people and
Sure.
directed them, acted alongside them, and have had some interesting success, certainly in the romantic comedy genre, which is not that's a tough genre. People think horror is tough. Horror is easier than a romantic comedy, because comedy's tough. Comedy and horror are similar in the sense that it's about timing and they but horror tends to be more universal than comedy. Comedy doesn't translate to different groups and factions even in your own society, let alone around the world. So I can imagine the romantic comedy route was a tricky endeavor, especially with the larger romantic comedy films always at play, like your, Runaway Brides and My Best Friend, speaking of Julia Roberts, all these types of things, right?
Well, my second film was called If Lucy Fell, which starred Sarah Jessica Parker, Ben Stiller, myself, Scarlett Johansson as a little girl, and Elle Macpherson. So even though I made that as an indie movie for all the movie geeks, whatever, in a good way, I mean that they want to know details.
Yeah.
I made it for $3.5 million.
Right.
In 95. That was still radically low budget, but TriStar picked it up.
Right.
And it we went to Sundance, did well, and they put it out in 1,000 theaters.
Right.
So that was actually nobody cares that they don't know or care how much I made it for when it's in 1,000 theaters.
Right.
They're going on a Friday night to a romantic comedy. And so, but my brand of romantic comedy, that was like, I don't want to say soft, but in a bad way, but that was the most vanilla of on the spectrum of what I write and do.
Right.
In terms of romantic comedy.
Yes.
Everything else is more romantically dramatic and then veers off to some really rough, dramatic, emotional stuff.
Sure.
So it was hard for me though, because my romantic comedies in the 90s were still rougher than big Hollywood versions.
Right.
So I was in this weird place, and they didn't feel totally indie. They didn't feel totally big. And so then my career has been really putting out indie films, and they've all gone to movie theaters. They're all on all the platforms. And even in television, I made a show called Starved for FX.
Which I thought you sent me the link to the, I guess was the pilot. You'd send me the first episode. Mm-hmm. It would never fly today. Well, maybe not. But I thought it was hilarious. Like in terms of I say it wouldn't fly today. It's because, there's things in there that are so funny and so witty. And I think it's just hilarious, but, might rub some people the wrong way today. But I thought it was fantastic.
Well, thanks, Dave. I mean, that again, I have a sort of a big cult following, which was the whole reason for that video you talked about. I did for the Kickstarter. It's like, look, a lot of you know me and love me. Yeah. A lot of you know me and hate me.
Yeah.
Which has always confused me because I think I'm just like Jenny from the block. I just feel like I'm like this guy. But the thing is, I talk about stuff in my work that I know, male perspective generally, but also I think I write women pretty well. I've been told as much.
Right.
That as humans, we all feel. It might be stuff that we don't admit to ourselves easily. We have an even harder time admitting it to our friends, even our best friends.
Right.
But we all feel that way, whether it's talk about gender and all that stuff. Simple things like that I would wait by the answering machine back when they had them, waiting for the girl I like to call.
Yep.
Like, I can't tell you when I put that scene in a movie, I would think that, well, just every guy does that. But like so many guys are indoctrinated with machismo, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I can't admit that I'm sensitive enough that I care if the girl calls.
Right.
I mean, to me, so for a lot of people out there, they're like, I'm just like that. And then, but the other people are like,
well, and you, especially in Starved, you, and for those of you that don't know what Starved is, tell us a little bit about what's.
Well, so it was a black comedy about 4 people in an eating disorder group.
Right.
And it was, I suffer from issues of eating disorder. I was never to the level of bulimic or anorexic.
Right.
But I think like most people, I have disordered eating.
Right.
I obsess way too much about what I eat, and night treats, I fluctuate 30 pounds. That's most of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Thank God. But so the show was on FX and it was about 3 guys.
Right.
And 1 girl that have eating issues.
Right.
So it was darkly funny. I mean, it was like,
it was, but it had heart, which is.
Well, that's what all my stuff is. I mean, at the core, I'm an optimist.
Right.
I believe in the human spirit. I believe in that we're all great people and that we're all just covering up whatever hurt we have. And that comes out in all kinds of messed up ways.
Right.
Myself, first and foremost.
Right.
But all my stuff has heart. But I think also that it just, people either really dig it or really are scared by it, which always, I understand psychologically why they are, because they're afraid to look at themselves because, and so then there are a lot of people that are like, because I've done so much I had a documentary series called I Can't Believe I'm Still Single on Showtime for 3 years, which followed me around trying to find the love of my life. And it was just like so raunchy. I can't tell you the people that love that show that would see it at midnight.
Right.
So there's all these people that, wait, weren't you that guy that blah, blah, blah? And then most people are like, I've never even heard of you, seen you or anything.
Right.
So that's why I did that, and so I just now, what brought me to the comic is that, listen, the world we live in, there was always ageism. Ageism has been around forever.
Right.
In most businesses, and certainly in filmmaking and television making.
Right.
So as you got older, it was harder to get jobs unless you're extremely, extremely rarefied air. Martin Scorsese, Brad Pitt, like some David Kelly, if you're a TV writer,
Right,
you know what I mean? Like very small amount as you got older. Like I heard a story once that just was emblematic of how hard it is. This story was from 1995. So I'm afraid to say how long ago that was. What is that, like 30 years?
30 years ago.
Okay, so 30 years ago, Larry Gelbart, who wrote Tootsie.
Yes.
Like all-time great romantic comedy. He wrote MASH, all-time great television show.
Oh, 1 second, Eric. Hang on. There's a little bit of you bowed out there for a second. You're back, and the reverb was a bit worse. Can you give me a? Oh, hang on.
Yeah, you're back. There was little bit of a. Okay,
you're back.
So Larry Gelbart, who wrote Tootsie, one of the all-time great films, and MASH, all-time great writer, right?
Yep.
So in 30 years ago, he was 70. 30 years ago.
Yep.
And he took MASH and Tootsie off of his resume because it aged him.
Right.
It dated him to the 24-year-old executives he was walking into the room with.
Of course.
But so if that was 1995, when did Tootsie come out? In the early 80s?
Yeah.
MASH was in the 70s.
MASH in the 70s.
But you're not talking about like it was 40 years ago. It was 10 years prior. It was 10 years prior. Anyway, so ageism has always been there. And then, listen, the world is what it is. You throw in some other stuff that's been going on about gender and race and stuff. And
you also, and I need to touch on this because obviously we don't need to talk extensively about it, but you also made a movie well before, that had a transgender actor in it, which was actress.
Yeah, actress.
Which was and that was long before what we're seeing now, which is
well, that was six. That was the time flies. It was 2016 the movie came out.
Okay, all right.
So,
okay,
Jesus,
so I guess not as far back as I thought it was, but
well,
still.
2015, but still, no. In terms of hiring a transgender actress to play a transgender character,
right?
I mean, Transparent, Jeffrey Tambor, who I love and made a movie with called Never Again, came under fire from the trans community because he wasn't transgender and he was playing a trans person.
Right.
So I wanted to hire a transgender actress to play that part. That's a whole conversation whether I think that you can only hire trans to play trans. Right. I don't actually believe that.
Yeah, same.
I believe that. I think.
Well,
but anyway,
that's a whole other thing. But
but I do think if there's a wonderfully talented and wonderfully appropriate actress or actor that
can
trans,
do it,
yeah, great.
Well, then great.
I prefer that.
Right.
So I hired her, and she was incredible. And that was before. I mean, we were lucky. It was right in the zeitgeist of Caitlyn Jenner and Laverne Cox and Orange Is the New Black.
Yeah.
And so that movie did come out.
Well, and it's got
it's called Boy Meets Girl.
Boy Meets Girl. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
No. So I was just saying. So you're right. Listen, Starved, whether it would work today or not. I mean, again, we were the leading edge of a duo comedy night that FX was trying.
Right.
And the back of me was Sunny in Philadelphia. So we both came out and we were the icebreaker of the night. We came first and then at 8, and they were at 8:30.
Right.
And we both did the same number of viewers, which was by today's standards, we did 1 million people each, which is like massive now, but like back then.
Yeah.
But the point is we did the same number, but they could only bring back one show. And my demographic and the demographic of watching my show was like all my stuff because it hits the heart, which means you can be a 75-year-old black man, you can be a 13-year-old white girl, you could be a trans 25-year-old, because my stuff speaks to the heart.
Right.
So I had all over the board watching my show. Sunny in Philadelphia had 18 to 35-year-old boys.
Right.
And that's the demo that every network wants.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So they didn't bring me back. And, you know, that's just how the cookie crumbles. I can't cry about it. And no, whether you like Sunny or not.
Did you ever try to pitch it to another network, or
No,
did
no,
they
no.
have
No, we had a season. I'm saying we had one season.
Right.
No, so I couldn't. They owned it.
They owned it. Okay. All right.
No. Yeah, Fox owned it. There was never. I called them years later to do a reboot or another, and they just. But we got boycotted by the National Eating Disorder Association and stuff. I mean, people were up in arms. It was very controversial.
Yeah,
it was very controversial.
But the writing is so good. I mean, it's so good, and the performances from everybody in it was really
well.
Good.
Yeah, again, Sterling K. Brown is in it, right? Like I do have a tendency to. I gave Scarlett Johansson her first job as a 10-year-old, so it's like I don't want to say I have like the golden touch, but if I do, I want to touch myself. You know what I mean? Like, when is it my turn? Like,
That's right. That's right. Fascinating. So it leads you. I mean, you've done all this stuff, and you've acted in these movies as well. I mean, you haven't just written these movies or directed these movies. You've starred in a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And
8 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and counting.
You know, I mean, I mean, writing, directing, and starring in is no easy feat, because you have to, acting is a different set of muscles than directing. And I mean, there's always some overlap and everything, but it's a different set of focus. It's a different set of things. So it takes quite, the skill set to do that. And you've done all this stuff over time. And then, of course, you sort of took a bit of a break to go have a family, you have some kids, and you're back here with a comic book, which is... So tell us about this now. For those of you that are fans of comics in the chat room, or if anybody is watching after the fact, or whoever is watching after the fact, I should say, if somebody will be watching after the fact. You obviously are a long life fan of comics, and you wanted to write a comic, but not just any comic, not a superhero comic. You have sort of, well, I said to you when we chatted the other day, I said it's almost kind of got this Animal House vibe to it just a little bit, and which is fascinating to me. And so tell us how you sort of came to acting like animals.
Yeah, well, and also I didn't take a break I have 2 kids. You saw one of them, the 3 and 6-year-old.
Yes.
Part of, as I was started off saying, by sort of, it's been a little harder to get a job.
Right.
Like I've still been out there trying to pitch scripts, trying to attach actors to scripts.
Fair enough.
So just to say, I mean,
that's fair.
I didn't, and it's fine. Some people do go, hey, I want to go away for 5 years and do something else.
Right.
I haven't. I've still, I mean, I made a movie called Before I Go in 2020.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm just saying it's a little harder for me to get a gig, which does lead us to acting like animals. I loved comics as a kid, as most people do. I'm not going to lie and say that I've been like Kevin Smith, who had a television show on AMC about his love of comics,
Right.
Like, that's not me, but I loved comics as a kid.
Right.
So to be honest with you, because my philosophy is create a life that no one can say no to me around my work.
Right.
I always want to plan B, C, D, and E, because I never wanted to be in a position where somebody could control the fact that I could or couldn't do my art. So part of that, listen, film is expensive. I would make some money in TV. I would try to raise money. Nobody would give it to me. I'd spend all my own money.
Right.
And make a movie and lose it all. But but I have this body of work as a result that I and a lot of people seem to like. So
it's great.
It's money well spent. But
yes.
I don't have any money. So I thought, okay, so how do I get a movie made now?
Right.
And I always had this great idea, or a TV show, which I love. And I've always had this idea. So Hollywood is obsessed with what's called IP, which is intellectual property.
Indeed, they are.
Your viewers are very sophisticated. So that can be, because they're so wanting somebody else to have said yes to something, whether it be a tiny little article in some obscure magazine, now even like a Reddit idea, some crazy thing that they see on Reddit. They have devoted people getting paid a lot of money to scour social media to find an idea. So I thought, let me create my own piece of IP, which is this comic book that in and of itself would be really cool. But also, if it gains traction, it can become an animated television show, which is what 100%. I would love it to also become.
Yeah.
So I had this idea always. I don't know where I came up with it, but I've always had this idea of like this dark dystopian, again, hopeful at the end of the day, world where the animals are in charge and they walk around just like us. They walk and talk like us, and we're the animals.
Right.
So they don't actually walk and talk like us. I should take that back, because it was very important for me that they actually walk on 4 legs, which is rarely, if ever, done. Generally, when animals are animated, they go on 2 legs. But to me, and I fought creatively with the people that helped me make the comic, saying, no, I don't want that. And they even said, like, listen, that just isn't done. I said, okay, well, I think it's way scarier if a 4-legged chihuahua is dominating a 6-foot human. Like, if you put them up on 2 legs,
don't they already?
well, yeah, of course. But it's like, I thought, okay, even if you have the proportion, but they stand up, the thing that separates us from animals are 2 things: logic. I think I may be wrong with people know, you know, a brain like we have, and 2 feet.
Right.
That's it. So when you see animals on 2 feet, they instantly are humanized, right? They instantly become, in our brains, more human.
Right.
And I didn't want that. So it's this dark, but so it isn't just through the lens of like PETA and animal activism. It has that element for sure.
Right.
I've been in and out of being vegan my whole life. I love animals. It hurts me to like kill an ant. But then I have gone through periods where I eat a certain amount of meat. I try to do it mindfully.
Yes.
But the things that we do to animals, man, I mean, like from testing on them and ripping their skin off to make coats for ourselves. I mean, like, again, I wear leather, you know, so I'm not preaching.
Right.
But I'm saying, do I like it? No, I don't. And when you see any of those videos, it makes you want to be vegan.
Right.
So in acting like animals, you'll have them baby farming babies, human babies, because they're the pets, right? You'll have them ripping off the skin of humans to make their leather. So scenes like that, when you talk about horror, you don't get more scary than that.
No,
right?
that's pretty
rough.
That is pretty vicious.
I mean, some of our favorite, you know, Leatherface, right? I mean, like human, like we love.
Well, that's exactly what he did.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, so it's sardonic, it's funny, but it's also like when I write live action with human beings. There's a scene where, you know, so in Acting Like Animals, the comic book, the sort of privileged characters are the dogs.
Right.
The people that are looked on as minorities are the gazelles. And then you have all kinds of other animals that occupy this world. But so you have a gazelle girl that has a boyfriend who's a giraffe, and he comes home late one night from med school and he's exhausted. It's been 50 hours. She's like, honey, come on, let's kiss, let's make out. We haven't been intimate in months. He said, I'm just exhausted. She says, just lie back, I'll take care of it. He lies down. She starts to unbutton his pants and goes down on him, and then he falls asleep. But she's like, I'm not going to stop. So she mounts him, starts riding him while he's asleep. Her best friend texts her and says, hey, you want to meet for a drink? She's like, sure, I'm busy. I'll be done in about a half an hour. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, having sex. She's like, oh, your boyfriend doesn't mind if you text while you're having sex? She's like, sends a picture of the guy asleep.
Right.
So the girl says like, he's not conscious. And and her friend is like, yeah, it's kind of rapey, right? And she's like, what are you talking about? It's my boyfriend. Like, he consented before he fell asleep. Well, what if he did that to you? And then the girl said, well, that would be rape. And she's like, but you doing it to him? Well, best girlfriend ever.
Right.
So social conversations like that
real people have.
Yes.
People have these conversations, and
people do that, and they're married and like,
right.
So those kind of, I don't know what to call them, just human interactions is what I've always written about. So that's in there too. It's not all through the lens of just sort of flipped animal cruelty through.
No, but what's really cool about it though is that but using the animals to have these conversations, even if, you know, a reader or a viewer isn't necessarily conscious of it, it seems almost a bit more palatable to see these conversations happening through the lens of the animals, which hopefully will allow the reader to go, and sort of see society a little more objectively than they can in their own day-to-day lives, because they're too close to it as humans, right? So seeing it you're putting a mirror up to society through
100%.
through the lens of, a role reversal in terms of species.
Right. And it seems so obvious and simple, right?
Right.
But it's like, but for some reason it's not. So like when you see when you see two monkeys who are the scientists and they're in the fragrance testing division of Fabergé,
Right.
and there's a human woman strapped down on the ground with clamps to keep her eyes open like Clockwork Orange.
Right.
And they drip shampoo in her eyes and she screams and they're like, oh man, I thought that one was going to work and not make them sting. Damn it. I guess back to the drawing board. You're like horrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You're horrified.
Yeah.
But then we're like, we do that to little bunnies, little bunny eyes,
Right.
And then, well, if we're not going to test on them, who are we going to test on? Humans?
Right.
Like,
right.
So, but it seems so, and it's, again, I'm not saying everyone go be reactionary vegans. I'm just saying, I at least want to be thoughtful and understand what's happening.
Right.
Right. Like what we're doing, what a stake. So imagine if we got slaughtered and packaged our loins into cute little steaks in the supermarket. Like that's
right.
that's what it is. So you're right that hopefully it's going to allow people to exactly what you said, start to have these conversations with themselves and the people they care about how they want to live and treat other people.
Right.
It's really all I've ever written about.
Brandon Collins in the chat room asks, will there be animal characters who are human rights activists?
Well, yeah, great question. In the first issue, one of the storylines is that in college, there's one of the lead girls is in college, and she's part of the group that her teacher that she has a kind of a crush on, because he's a cool teacher, and he leads the Animals Against the Unethical Treatment of Humans Club.
Right, right, and there would be.
No, and literally, it's in the first issue. It's a great question, and they go and they protest to stop testing on humans, stop baby farming. It's straight up.
Yeah,
that's exactly that. So it's in the first issue. So you're thinking like I'm thinking.
Right, exactly. Well, let me go jump over to the other screen because I want to show your Kickstarter, folks. If this is something that you find fascinating, interesting, the first issue it's not available yet though, right? Is it available yet?
Well, on the Kickstarter, the point is to go there, and if people are into it, the first 6 pages are done.
Right.
And they're there, like fully colored with dialogue bubbles, like they're done.
Right.
So on Kickstarter, you could read the first 6 pages and you'll instantly, from what we're talking about, go, I get it.
I'm going to put the link to the Kickstarter in the chat room. So I just did there.
Cool. And so then if somebody was interested and wanted the digital download, they could buy that. If they wanted the hard copy, they could get that.
Right.
Fancier stuff, they can get that. But the point is the digital download of the completed comic will be done in a month. So maybe 6 weeks. So by the end of the Kickstarter campaign, in like a month, they would get the first digital version of the entire comic book, 24 pages, off to them. And then if somebody wanted the hardcover, that's going to be done in probably a couple months.
Gotcha. So I'm on the Kickstarter right now, and I've scrolled down to where it says pages 1 to 6. Let me just bring this up larger for my audience.
Cool.
Let's get us off the screen here for a second.
We can also,
Hang on a sec. Let me just take. You're still there, right, Eric?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, good. I'm just taking you and me off the screen for a minute, and I want to put this up a bit larger so people can actually see what this looks like here. But this is great stuff. So this is on the Kickstarter. This is the first 6 pages, right?
Yeah, this is the first 6 pages of the comic book. Like that's it, finished. And then so then pages 7 through 24 are being colored now. They've already been written.
Right.
They've been illustrated. Now they're just being colored. That process takes a couple of weeks.
Right, exactly. I love the artwork. I love the animation. I love how it's stylized.
Hold on, something's happening.
Sorry?
I just bounced over to the YouTube page, and then there was just like music, and I better turn that off. Okay, I've turned it off.
Oh, maybe refresh the page.
I don't know. It was, I'm so tech unsavvy that I knew I shouldn't have even tried. I knew I shouldn't have even tried. No, thanks. I think the artist is a Brazilian guy who did a gorgeous job, and the colorist, I think it's very simple and elegant,
Right.
because I
It
didn't
is.
want it to be, yeah. You know, you could go very cartoony. There's a lot of ways sort of with this subject matter you could go. And I just wanted to sort of let the story speak for itself.
Right. Yeah.
But you see in the first page, you know, like there's the reveal that you see a puppy and a baby playing on the carpet.
Right.
And you think obviously that the human baby is the baby of this couple who are talking and ogling about it,
Right.
and that the puppy is the puppy. And then you quickly learn when the baby pees on the rug that the human baby is in fact the pet.
Correct.
And the puppy is in fact the child of the family that walks and talks and their dogs.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Like, it looks good. I like the layout of it as well. You know, the different frames, how everything's laid out. Like you said, it's simple. It's not overdone. It's just kind of, I'm not a comic book guy. I wasn't really into comics growing up, but this looks attractive to me. It's colorful, easy to read. The layout is great. I love seeing these.
I'm going to try again to bring it up on my phone.
Okay.
Because I won't be denied that I'm not a Luddite just because I'm like a dad with 2 kids. Like, but yeah, no, well, I want it. That's what I'm saying. I want it to be inviting to, because a lot of my friends who aren't super into comics, they're like, well, I don't know what to say. I'm just a guy. I'm just a person, but it looks great. I'm like, well, you're my audience. Like, it doesn't have to be a comic aficionado. It's meant to be something that can reach across the aisle to people who aren't necessarily thinking themselves of as big comic people.
Right.
You know, because again, the story is so universal. And that's why I want to make it an animated series. I mean, I love it as a comic book. More issues, which is part of the Kickstarter. We've already reached our goal, which was a modest in terms of what we really need. We really need like $25,000
right.
to make a second issue.
Right.
But you know, listen, at least the first one's done, going to get into people's hands. And, you know, and that's what I appreciate about you. You know, we met because we have a mutual friend.
Correct.
Who was like, my friend Dave, like, is cut from the cloth that I am, which is he just went out and did it himself, you know, and made these great films, raised a lot of money from these kind of campaigns to help with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hang on a sec here. Let me just move the Kickstarter back over here to the side. Get you back on the, 1 second here. Get you back on. There you are. Yeah, well, you know, these campaigns, whether it's Kickstarter or Indiegogo, there's all different projects and causes and stuff, and I just really liked, you know, obviously, you know, your vibe and, you know, your passion, your work, and I think it's really cool that you're, you know, I mean, people don't realize how difficult it is to, you know, to create something from, you know, conception to completion, and to go through on the indie level. And to go through all of the, you know, the work and the time it takes to really bring something together, whether it's a short film or whether it's a comic book or, you know, whatever it is. So I appreciate the hustle. I appreciate the effort and the time. Even though I'm not a comic book guy, the parallels are you know, similar, you know, in terms of the people you're working with and the money you need to raise. I mean, you know, like you said, I mean, you know, to get the next issue, you know, it's going to be $25,000. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's totally doable and totally achievable. And folks, you know, if you're somebody that is into comics and that you want to donate to this, there's different tiers there, of course, very similar to Indiegogo, right? This is Kickstarter, but there's different tiers. Let me see here. Tiers as low as $10, $20, $40, going all the way up to, you know, several $100s and beyond. Obviously, I encourage you to check it out and order this comic. Help contribute to getting the second issue made, but order this one, even the digital, version. So you've got on your phone to check it out. I think it'd be obviously going to a worthy cause to get this going, because I agree with you. I think if this falls into the right hands, if this takes off, I could totally see this being an animated series. One of those like late night Adult Swim kind of shows, or Netflix may even take a crack at it. But it would be one of those shows that is like, what's the name of that show? I don't know if the chat room knows or not. There's like it's like just one of those shows. It's very adult.
Is it animated or live action?
It's animated. But it's like, it's animated. It's adult. The themes are adult. When I say adult, I mean just like this, not X-rated or anything. But it's very sort of like, it's got a following, it's niche, but it's funny, and there's I forget what the name of it was, but it reminds me of.
Is it on now? There was Archer on FX, and then there was BoJack Horseman on Netflix.
Maybe it's BoJack Horseman. Maybe that's what it is. It kind of reminds. Yes, I think that's what it reminds me that this, if it were to become an animated series, it would fall into sort of that kind of category. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it would depend on how much how far they'd let me go.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really rough.
Right.
It's really rough. But I will tell you that in many ways, when you were saying, well, could you do Starve now? In many ways, I will say that content has caught up to what I have been doing years ago.
Right.
In terms of sensibility, things being okay. Like I'll watch something and I'll be like, damn, that's like rough to me.
Right.
And if you're saying that's rough to me, that means it's rough.
Right.
Because I'm pretty I can get pretty rough with stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the whole thing about, sensitivity in many other areas, of course, that's the world we live in. But in other certain areas, like there's stuff that is on now that I'll pop on and I'll be like, wow, I can't believe they're doing that.
Amazing.
So in that respect, I think it would be how rough they'll let me go, but I don't have to go so rough. I mean, we could dial it back.
Right. It would.
I mean, obviously network isn't going to touch this.
Yeah.
Unless it was way dialed back, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
But in terms of streamers,
it
would just be what they're willing to do.
What they're willing to do. Frank Riker in the chat just said, and this is kind of this is good because he's also. Do people know what you do for a living, Frank? I think people do, right? I think I can say so. Anyways, let me know if I can. But Frank just said he just ordered the signed edition.
Thank you, Frank. That's so generous of you.
Amazing.
I really appreciate that. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for that, Frank. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. If he gives me the okay to say what he does, you'll see why I think this is
okay. It's a cliffhanger now.
It's a cliffhanger.
I want to know what Frank does.
It's a cliffhanger. It's a cliffhanger. If he's still in the room, is he still in the room? I hope he is.
It's really great.
That's great. Yeah, folks. Again, here I'll put the link in the chat. Again, and if you're not really into it, you're like, nah, it's not really my kind of thing, but maybe you know somebody who this would be right up their alley. Like, oh, no, it's not my thing, but my brother's totally into comics. You know what I mean? Right. Send the link to him. Well,
even the thing about the comic, Dave. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, but the thing is, again, I don't want to out myself as not like a comic geek, but I also like to be, for better or worse, I've always been very truthful and transparent. Like another thing, like we were talking about some people who know me, like me, don't like me, whatever.
Right.
Because I'm so much just I am who I am, like in my movies. And when you say it's different skill set,
right.
I would literally, it's just, I don't know. I always wanted to make a movie where I'm in it and doing everything. So when I'm directing a movie and I'm in the scene, there are times sometimes like if there's two other people in the scene, I'm literally standing there directing, watching the monitor. And then I'd say to the DP, hold on a second. And I'd walk around and then walk into the shot, do my part, and walk back out of it and go back and look at the thing. It's just, but it's seamless.
It's seamless. Yeah.
It doesn't,
fair.
It really is. And because I'm like that, I was once walking down the street with an actress who I was casting.
Yeah.
And we left the audition and we're just walking down the street and she goes, what else have you done? I said, well, I made a movie called If Lucy Fell. And she's like, oh yeah, who were you in that? Right. And I was like, I was the lead guy, Joe, that I lived with Sarah Jessica Parker. She's like, no, you didn't. That's my favorite movie. You weren't in that. And I was like, like, this is verifiable. It's not like I'm saying I played Michael Corleone, you know, like in The
Well, that
Godfather,
too.
like, but like, you can look this shit up. You know what I mean? Like, and I said, yeah, I did. And I didn't even have glasses then. So it's not even like I have my crazy Son of Sam. I hate to say it, but they're literally, look them up. I hate to say it, but they're his glasses. But I just want big glasses so I can see shit.
Right.
I'm married. I don't care if I look good to anybody. So anyway, but I didn't even have glasses, so I look even more like I did in the movie.
Right.
And it was like 6 movies after, like 5 years after the movie came out.
Right.
And she finally looked at me and said, "Oh my God, it's you." And I think it's just that I'm just so myself that, in a weird way, even people that enjoy, I hate the word fan, but that enjoy my films, when they meet me, they just don't kind of like put it together because I'm just a dude.
Right.
Talking,
well,
you know what I mean?
And to be fair too, I mean, I've yet to, not that I will at any point, I don't know, but I do have on-camera acting experience myself. I fell into the voiceover side of things full time, but I began in the business as an on-camera actor. And so I love to perform. I love being in front of the camera. No shock to anybody who's watching probably, but so I've yet to actually, nor will I don't know if I ever will, write, direct, and star in a film. So to be fair, I might find the same kind of thing. Oh, it's not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. But to be able to do it in theory is, you know, I mean, you're not just acting, you're directing, and that's a whole different thing you got to worry about, right? You know, at the same time. So it's impressive nonetheless, but Frank, and Frank says, okay. I assume that okay is for me. Anyway, Frank is an animal control officer. And so, so this is right up Frank's alley. I mean, this is, you know, so I think it's, some of the stories Frank has told about, you know, I think you used to say, Frank, you'd peel deer off of the bumper of cars. Oh, God. There's a thing for your next, you know, your next issue, but it's a person.
Oh yeah. But you're
peeling
an eyeball.
Yes. You're peeling a person off of the, hang on a sec. Now we're getting really dark.
It's all pretty dark, man.
Maybe you have human control officers. You know,
that's a great idea. You're literally flip it all. No,
you could. You could just flip the whole thing. You know what I mean?
No, wait, it is. It's all flipped. I just have to.
That's it.
Yeah, and in this comic, the people can't talk. They grunt and can smile and make noises. The human beings,
right?
But the human beings who are being bred for meat, who are pets, all the things we do to animals in our world,
right?
But they don't. They can kind of like bark. They don't, you know, they don't talk.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating.
But so what I was going to say too, Dave, was like when you said, well, like, so I'm not like, I haven't looked at a comic book in years, but I really had this very specific idea that this world would live perfectly as a comic book in and of itself, but also as a precursor to bounce into being an animated series.
Right.
So the comic book itself, I can't tell you whether it's like other comic books or not, but I can tell you that for someone who's not necessarily all about comic books, this comic book reads like a movie.
Right.
You know, it reads like an episode of a television show.
Right.
Because quite honestly, it is.
Well, yeah, and that's how you write, right? And so.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I don't even know how it
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Stylistically, if it's like other comics or not, but I can tell you that even if you're not into comics, this will read like a script of an episode of a television show.
Right.
You know, the way it's laid out, the way the characters talk, the style and speed of it, it reads as an episode of TV.
So here's a question for you, because I'm curious. Would you want to have like a set, you know, like a through line, a set? If you ever thought, you know what, I think I am going to start the process of maybe pitching this to, you know, Netflix or, you know, wherever, but I want to have like 6 issues first. So there's a through line and a story that could be the basis and foundation for the episodes or for the entire series.
Well, yeah, that's already like, I mean, listen, our mutual friend Brett, who's watching, it's when he finishes teaching his jujitsu.
Well, he's also working on something right now too
well, he's always working on a million things, but I mean, that's how you and I met.
Yeah.
He's a great writer and podcaster, and
he is.
And so what you have to do now to get a TV show especially sold is so gargantuan in terms of the prep work that you have to bring a television outlet or a streamer.
Yeah.
In the old days, but in the 90s, even the early 2000s, what I would do is I would get a meeting, like when I sold Starved.
Yeah.
I would get a meeting with the executive. I'd go in, I'd pitch them, which takes about 35 minutes. I would tell them basically the story, the idea. Hey, it's a dark, funny show about 3 guys and a girl who have eating disorder issues, and tell a couple scenes. And then he'd go, great, let's do it, and buy it in the room.
Right.
Or say, oh, let me talk to my guys. But before I was in the parking lot, I got a call, they're buying it.
Right.
And that would be a script order. And I would write the pilot. And then if they would order the pilot, I'd shoot the pilot. And then if they like that, they would order 4, 6, 8, 10 for a season. Now, you have to, when you talk about, you have to have a Bible of all the character arcs, all the through lines of each story up to 5 seasons.
Yeah.
So you need 50 episodes thought out, written, like that's what they want in order to order it. Now, the good news is now they don't just shoot 1 anymore. They might order the first season of 10 off of that.
Right.
Because they decided that monetarily, why spend $2 million on a pilot that you throw away when we could spend $10 million and make 6 episodes? And then the way they sell it and stuff, they make their money back. So the answer is yes. I've already thought out, the first season arc of the first 6, because that is actually a comic book. It's funny you touched on that number. That's a classic 4 or 6 is a classic kind of first season for comic books.
Interesting.
For a comic book run is 6. And certainly on Netflix and all those people, they like to make 6 or 8.
6 or 8, yeah.
So yeah, I have the first season. And then, but to answer your question of whether we're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 issues before we approach them, that's kind of up in the air, because apparently Teenage Ninja Turtles sold like 4,000 copies and then became $1 billion industry. So,
well, look at He-Man. He-Man, I think they only created the toys or the cartoon to sell the toys. I think they were toys first, if I'm not mistaken. I should know this.
Right, something like that.
But anyway.
So the point is that we'll see how it does in terms of how many people buy copies on the Kickstarter, and then after the month, in the next couple months, how many people buy it when it's being sold on the publisher's website where it's going to live.
Right.
But to be honest with you, come September, look, I think Keanu Reeves has the biggest Kickstarter of all time. I think he did a comic book. I think it was whether it was Jack Reaper or not Jack Reacher, but
John Wick.
Yeah, something like that. I'm bastardizing the story, but like $1 million,
right?
Like something through the moon,
right?
Unless if it did that, which of course it won't.
Oh, 1 second, Eric, you've frozen. Oh, Eric has disappeared, ladies and gentlemen. No worries. Oh, wait, hang on a sec. You're back. Yeah, just let his Wi-Fi kick back in.
Sorry about that. I'm in. Are we back?
We are. 1 second. Hang on. Yeah, a bit of a echo from you. One moment.
Okay. Is that any better?
It's a little.
I will talk. I'm in Vermont.
There you go. I think it's a little better.
Xfinity sucks. No free ads, but certainly free dogging of bad companies. Anyway,
it's all right. We're back. We're back.
Okay, good. So, totally lost my train of thought.
We were talking about
how many we're going to take before we go. So if we sold $1 million, which we won't, kind of like anything in the middle doesn't matter. Like if we say to Netflix, if we have I think like Walking Dead, I think they were around for 7 years before AMC bought that as a show.
Right.
So I don't know how many books they had done, but the point is like whether we have one, we could still go to these guys and say, look, it sold 4 copies. Who gives a shit? It's a brilliant idea. Make it a TV show.
Right.
Right. So is there more of a proof of concept if I've made 2 or 3? So we sold like 10,000 copies of 3 issues. Netflix isn't going to care. That's not going to move the needle.
No.
So I think to answer your question, I think we'll probably go in September after the summer because you don't want to sell anything and Hollywood kind of shuts down.
Yeah.
I think we'll go in the fall with the one episode, with the one issue.
Right.
And say, and everything else we need, the Bible and everything. We'll send the issue, say, does this float your boat? And if they go, yeah, tell us more, then we would go and have a pitch meeting with all the material.
Right. That's a good idea.
But I still want to have a second bite of the apple, like Walking Dead, because I also love it as a comic book. If it could start to get some traction, and I can raise enough to make a second issue, and then hopefully it can become a little cottage industry where the second makes the third and the third makes the fourth. Right. If I could at least make enough money from issue to issue to make more issues.
Right.
Then in a year and a half, if there were 6 issues and it did gain traction, we could go back to the same streamers and say, look, you passed on this a year and a half ago, but now we actually do have 1 million followers.
Right.
And we and even with AI, that's a whole nother conversation. Like,
yeah. Indeed.
I want to know how much it would cost me to make a 3-minute scene of it, or even a 22-minute episode of it myself. Like, how much does that cost? I really don't know. I know that a half hour of network The Simpsons is $2 million.
Right.
But that's also because there's huge salaries built in and stuff.
Right.
But like, how much could I make? Because that's the next idea is, listen, the flip side of the fact that the internet and the fact that everyone can make a movie on their phone has in many ways killed the industry that I started in of independent film. The flip side that's good is that you can also make it yourself and get it out there to millions of people.
Right.
Right. So like the very thing that helped kill it is also the thing that can facilitate it.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword in many ways. Frank says here, do it, Eric, human control officers. That's what he thinks.
Listen, Frank, he's in for $75. He can, we'll see how he sounds and he'll get that part. Well, if I get a second issue, I'll write him in. I almost had a tier for like $2,000. Like, I'll write you into the next episode.
Right.
Like you'll have a character.
Right.
But then I thought, well, unfortunately, I don't know if there's going to be a second episode. So
right.
What if someone gives $2,000? I'd have to like find them and give them their money back if we don't do a second episode. Yeah. But we'll write Frank in if we're lucky enough to do a second episode. I'll have Frank's info. He can decide if he wants to be the human control officer or the human that's being controlled. Because maybe somebody wants to be a human character, or maybe they want to be the character of themselves turned into an animal.
That's right.
Anyway,
yeah,
I'm down with you, Frank. I'll make it happen if I'm lucky enough to get a second issue, which you're helping us make.
Frank follows up with any plans for comic conventions in the future?
Another good question. There's New York Comic-Con in October. London was that we weren't ready for London, although the fellow that helped me make the comics, a guy named Neil Gibson, who makes his own comics, and he has a series called Twisted Dark, and he's made, I think, 20 comics over the years. That's his comic series.
Right.
He also has a publishing house that he helps other people like me make a comic, and then he publishes it. So he actually was in London, which you'll see if you watch the little video.
Mm-hmm.
He had the first 10 pages of Acting Like Animals finished and on his booth at London Comic-Con. And if you watch the video, you'll see that we got 5 or 6 or 7 people that sat there, read it, and then we filmed their reaction.
Yes. Yep.
And that's all in the video. So that Comic-Con was really cool because you had some really interesting, eclectic group of people really responding well to the comic, which is the biggest proof of, that I love.
Yeah.
So might go to New York in October again with a 3 and 6 year old. I live in Vermont. It's worth it. I would do it, but it's hard to, I have poker. I have to go on poker trips, so I got to prioritize, Frank. You know what I mean? Like, if my wife's going to let me go for 4 days, it might have to be to the World Series of Poker and not New York Comic-Con.
Yeah, you could even have the World Series of Poker in one of the issues. But it's dogs playing poker, right?
Right.
You could do a riff on that. I mean, that might be, maybe it's gazelles playing poker or something, or
no, there's that. You're referring to that classic like felt
Yes.
thing of dogs playing poker. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know what that is, but it's some classic thing, right?
Yeah, it is. I think there's one where they're playing pool too, and as well.
Maybe it is. Yeah. Right.
Poker, pool. I think there's quite a few of them.
Well, listen, and if I can make a final table at the World Series of Poker, then I will have acting like animals swag all over me, So like,
it's good. It's good. I mean, if this issue, once it's done and it's out there, and you could like really start to build, like swag, t-shirts, hats, even again, social. I mean, there's an audience for this, and I know there's an audience for this. Half the battle is just getting out there and to find them, right? And that can be tricky, but yeah, I think it's a great premise. I like the satire of it. I like the irony of it. It's ironic. It's satirical. It's good writing. The animation is solid in terms of not the animation, the illustration, I should say, is solid and I mean, even this guy here, you see where he's, got the scope up to his eye and he's about to shoot him. I mean, it's so dark, but it's great.
Well, so that scene, right? So that scene, the cover,
show everybody the cover again.
Yeah, the cover is actually from a scene in the comic later that's not on the Kickstarter. It's not part of the first 6 pages.
Right.
But, in America, apparently, they have these illegal, like, safari, exotic animal hunting, like, what do you call them? I don't know. Areas you go.
Right.
And you can pay for a high price. You can go in there and kill lions and shit.
Oh, game hunting, I think it's called.
Yeah, like game. That's right.
Yeah.
So I tried to think of every single thing that we do to animals that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, so there's got to be an exotic human game hunting illegal place in Arizona.
Right.
So that's from a scene where that guy he's Ralph Adams. He's like the DuPont. I don't know DuPont personally. I don't know Johnson & Johnson, so I don't want to throw them under the bus and say they're bad people. I don't know them. But the people that are bad, that are out there making chemical stuff that is killing the world and the universe.
Yeah.
That's this guy. He's testing on people. He doesn't care about anybody but making a ton of money. He's that guy.
Right.
That's the guy shooting. He's a Chihuahua.
Yeah.
So that's a main character, and he's out there, and he's shooting this beautiful blonde Scandinavian human that they brought in from Sweden.
Right.
Onto this illegal human hunting farm in Arizona.
Right. And it's funny. I bet you there are people that would, or maybe there already have been, but people that would almost be offended by this in such a huge ironic way, and where look, I mean, you could have people that are like, oh, that's so awful, that also think shooting animals is awful. And then you are probably going to have the people that look at this and go, oh my God, that's so awful, but are perfectly fine with shooting a lion, or an elephant in the Sahara, wherever. And yet they get offended by this. And, you want to call them out on their bullshit and kind of think, well, yeah, that's the whole point, is that I'm trying to show you how ridiculous this is. I bet you there's going to be people that are like that, ironically.
No, 100%. And when I listen, I don't know, one great thing about working with Neil Gibson, is I certainly deferred to him on a lot of comic, I hate the word trope, but I've now used the word it's one of those, there are 3 terms I don't want to say I hate them, that's dramatic, but that annoy the hell out of me. The biggest one is narrative.
Right.
That whoever started using the word narrative like 8 years ago for everything, I think that person needs to go to jail, because narrative used to mean you only said it when you were talking about writing a book. You would say the narrative in the book is that the guy goes and meets a girl and they fall in love.
Right.
So now narrative is so overused anyway. And trope is another one. Like, so, but I'll use it. See, I hate it because I become the person that I resent.
Right.
For comic book tropes, like, or comic book rules, I didn't know. So I learned these incredible things. I would, like, it's a female character. that is getting tested with the shampoo in my comic.
Right.
It's a female human that they're testing on.
Right.
And when they drip it, there's a close-up of her in the comic book of it going in her eye. And then the next panel is supposed to be her screaming. She's held down, screaming in pain.
Right.
And, you know, you give the artist the script, and then the artist has latitude to create his vision of what you want. It's not like a movie storyboard where in a movie you have two actors. You say this is between a man and a woman sitting at a park bench.
Right.
There's no latitude creatively. You know, an artist is just trying to show you that frame.
Correct. Yeah.
For a movie. But it obviously artistically in this, he has some latitude. So there was no woman in there. There was this big scream letters, SCREAAAM, and a swoosh.
Yeah.
Covering where her body was. So I said, like, I understand that. Is it scarier to not see her? You know, is it scarier to imagine, which is a horror question? You know,
Yes.
it could be scarier not to see the thing. Like the brilliant scene in Scarface when you do end up seeing it, but that incredible tracking shot from outside of Miami when you hear all the cars and the conversation and the music and the salsa, and then you are pushing towards the outside of a building and you start to hear the chainsaw.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you're pushing closer, and then the chainsaw becomes the louder noise in the outside, and you go inside, and then you actually do see what happens. But
well, one of my favorite moments, I mean, I'm a big theater of the mind guy. My audience knows this. Less is more. That's the kind of horror that is, I mean, there's room for everybody at the table, but ultimately
Sure.
I appreciate more of the psychological, theater of the mind stuff. And one of my favorite moments, I think you're a big fan of Rosemary's Baby, if I'm not mistaken. And
we talked about it.
Yeah, and I am too. And a perfect example of what we're talking about is at the end of that movie when Mia Farrow is looking into the bassinet or the crib. The crib, and is like, his eyes. What have you done with his eyes? You just see her go like this, and at no point does Polanski ever show us what's in the crib. At no point do we ever see it. At no point do we ever get a good look at it. It is just all her reaction, her face, her turning around, speaking to everybody. We don't ever see it. And just the line, what did you do to his eyes? His eyes just, now we all go to our own version of how god-awful that might look. We all have that image in our head now of what that might be. If he was to show us that, especially in 1968 when the effects were not, as up to snuff perhaps, that might not have resonated well with the audience, right? But it stands the test of time today because he didn't show us what was in there. And now it is etched in our head forever. Yeah.
No, you're so right. It's brilliant. And I haven't rewatched it in a while, but it's almost like when you started telling that story, I knew what you were going to talk about. And I thought, wait, I remember that at first they don't, but I was like, well, then did they cut to the baby? And I don't think they ever actually, I know that the woman says, dear, it's your baby, take him.
Right.
And then I think it's wrapped up and it starts to suckle on her or she starts to hold it. And then you see her her motherly instinct kicks in.
Right. Yes.
But I think you're right. I don't think they ever actually show. And of course it would be
there may have been some sort of, I stand to be corrected, but there may have been some sort of moment in and around those scenes
where you
somewhere.
see something scary looking because
like maybe there was a crossfade of like a creepy face or something. Not
Someone's
of the baby,
tell us
but
in the chat. Someone has to.
Yeah, somebody in the chat.
Because I think you're right. I remember that it was what you're saying.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily of the baby. It's just like the demon in The Exorcist. How you see
or the ears, like some pointy ears. It was something. I don't know. I thought it was something. Maybe not. Sure. Maybe not. Maybe that's my imagination. Was to your point.
But that's it, right? I mean.
Anyway, in this scene, I said to him, listen, I understand the idea, but also I think part of what I want to do in moments in this comic is to show the horror, to show it to you.
Right.
To say, look, this is what we do. Don't look away. Don't imagine it. This is what we do.
Yeah, I think in comic book form, it's best, I think. Yeah.
Well, but then he said something interesting. He said, you're going to lose a lot of people because there's a rule in comic books that you don't show women in pain. You don't show. I said, so if it was a man, he said, then you could chop him up with a chainsaw. But if it's a woman, you can't show her in that kind of pain. You will just lose people. And I thought that was interesting. Because I didn't, obviously, I don't want to see anyone in pain.
Yeah.
And I guess it's true. I would bristle more, but that was also part of the point.
Yes.
But when you say that a lot of people are going to be, this is what I started out with, why I'm always so, I understand it psychologically, why some people really rail against my stuff when I think it's like, come on. But I know why. And it's because everyone's just speaking from their own experience, but there will be people, and I thought about this, like, who somehow view the fact that I have a female character being animal tested.
Right.
They'll have an opinion about that.
Well, yeah, they will, but then you kind of have to, look at them and say, well, that's the point. If you're having that reaction, then I've done my job in a lot of ways, right? I mean,
right, but our society just unfortunately has gone away. If you're talking to a rational person.
That's true. That's silly me, Dave. Come on.
Yeah. I know, like a thoughtful person who can still have opinions and go
right. You mean like a nuanced person? Yeah.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes, which is most of us. It is most of us.
Well, yes, it is most of us.
It really is. They just don't get the megaphone.
Right.
The megaphone seems to be going because they sell tickets. That's people true. That aren't in the middle sell the tickets, right?
That's true. That is true.
So that's a whole much larger conversation.
It is. It would be. Oh no, Brandon says that was during the Satan sex scene when you see a bit of a weird kind of face cross in and cross dissolve.
Oh,
and
great.
Braden's right. Great. Yeah. So it's true. You never see the baby's face. You never see his eyes.
Oh, that's what it was. It was the Satan sex scene that you saw some weird fucking devil. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Which makes sense. Frank says, I say about time, chimps don't look pretty wearing lipstick.
What doesn't look pretty?
Chimps. Oh. Chimps don't look good wearing lipstick. But listen, I know it's coming up to 8:30 here soon, and you've got the big game coming up, the basketball game.
I looked, and when you said I want to move it, the first thing I did was see if the fucking hockey game was on, because I was like, we won't have anybody. I was like, the fucking hockey game's on. I'm not getting on a fucking podcast with you. We'll have
you got the hockey game, the basketball game.
Brett, our friend Brent, and my mother will be on the fucking.
Amazing.
I actually really like I like playoff hockey. To be told, I think there's few things more exciting than playoff hockey.
That's true.
In the middle of the season, I probably won't watch a game, but playoff hockey, I do love. I mean, playoff hockey, overtime in a seventh game, there's nothing quite as exciting.
Oh, there isn't. Hockey is religion up here, of course.
Of course, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm trying to get some. If we had those, the sensors on the, with the people in the room, we'd be going up.
Oh, we would.
The red line, the blue line, when they put the
it's true.
Democrats and you see the Democrats go down.
We
would have, everyone would be going up right
that's
now.
That's it. No, it's, but even though I'm in Toronto and I like, the Leafs, I do. But my favorite hockey team is the Buffalo Sabres. They've been my favorite hockey team since, for probably about 40 years now.
They're close. They're geographically close.
They are. They're only about an hour from me, but never won the Stanley Cup and haven't made the playoffs in over 11 years. They suck. Actually, it's been 14 years.
So why did they become your childhood team, I assume?
I don't know. I think my brother Neil is a fan of the Montreal Canadiens. My brother Bob is the Flyers. My sister Jill's the Leafs.
Really?
Yeah. I became a big fan of the Sabres when, if you're a hockey fan, you might know this name, when Tom Barrasso was on the Buffalo Sabres. He was their goalie. And that's got to be like 85, 86, somewhere in there. And I don't know. I just always liked the Buffaloes.
Is that common though? I mean, for a whole family to like every team except only 1 out of 4 is their hometown hockey team? Is that normal in Canada?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a very good question. I'm not entirely
Because in
sure.
America, like you're a homie for your home team.
Yeah, it's true.
I
Well,
mean,
at that time of the
Dallas Cowboys, and there's certain people that transcend people, but generally speaking,
yeah.
you like where you grew up.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. I'd have to ask. I was just talking to my sister actually earlier tonight. I'll have to ask her why Bob likes the Flyers. Why does Neil like the Canadians?
Philadelphia Flyers.
I know. But the Sabres, I mean, they've never won anything. You know, they've been to the Cup twice.
But Buffalo is cool. Like Buffalo's this working class, like
blue collar.
Yes, it's a great town. Buffalo's a great town.
It is. And I've been there a few times to see a hockey game, and I love it. I just wish they didn't suck, and and they could make the playoffs.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Dave. Listen, I appreciate you. And
no problem, man. No problem. I appreciate you coming on, folks. Again, you know, if you're into comics, even if you're not specifically those that you're watching live right now, or even if you're watching after the fact, mention it to somebody who is. Eric is looking to raise about $25,000, and he's well on his way. And I think it's a great idea. It's a satirical, ironic sort of thing. These are the kind of things that are fun to read, fun to watch, and hopefully it'll become a series one day. You know, you never know. But yeah, I appreciate you being on.
Thanks, man.
Does anybody have any last questions for Eric before we send him on his way? Let me just see here. Anybody have any questions about the comic, about the characters or anything like that? Again, I'll just put the link into the chat one last time here. There we go. It is in the chat. For anybody who wants to check it out. And like I said, even if you just spend every little bit helps, like I used to say with my own Indiegogo campaigns, every little bit helps. It really does. It really does. So feel free to pass it along if you want to. Brandon says, for Eric, what was it like directing James Rayborn? He was always
a great question.
He was always one of my favorite character actors and seemed like a really nice guy.
That's a really great question. I really love when people have, you know, I don't want to say offbeat. I mean, when you do these junkets, you know, you'll get like 20, 80 people asking the same question. That's a great. He is also one of my favorite actors, and I felt really lucky to have him. He was one of those actors, you know, most actors are really nice and they're really selfless and egoless. Maybe it'd be interesting to people to hear that. Some aren't. They'll remain nameless. But he was one of those ones that was just so lovely and responsive and was a gem to work with. He couldn't have been nicer and kinder and like didn't just his air was like, I'm just here to have fun and do what you'd like. Also, it was easy because what he did was what I liked.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's easy because there's no conflict. It's like his idea of what to do and the part to play. He played Sarah Jessica's dad.
Right.
Was perfect. I mean, so you don't. So I guess I don't know how he'd be if I said, James, listen, could you like do it standing on your head?
Do it differently.
Listen, I once had an actor. It'd be amazing what actresses. I had a beloved actress, and we were in a scene where I won't say her name, you know, but it was me, Catherine. I mean, there were 4 people at the table. She played the mother. And there was 3 people. She played the mother, and then there was a couple, her son and the girl that he brought over as his girlfriend.
Right.
And she said something like, what do you like about my son or something? And I gave the direction to the actress to do her whole long response looking at her boyfriend, her son, rather than at the mother who asked the question.
Right.
I just thought it was divine. And so she was looking at the son saying, he's kind, he's beautiful, he looks at me in a certain way. She got so angry. She said, she would be looking at me. I asked her the question, why isn't she looking at me? She got furious. It was like a big deal. And she was like a big actress. And I was like, I just think it's kind of brilliant, to be honest with you. Not maybe brilliant's a big word. Right. I just like the idea that at a dinner with the mother for the first time, he answers the question looking at the son. It didn't seem like that big a deal.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
James Rebhorn was not like that. He was like lovely.
Yeah. There are some actors that are, you know, everybody has a different process. People do bring egos, whether that ego comes out or whether it's humble and hidden but everybody has different processes. Everybody, there are directors, actors, or actors. Some actors, as you know, I'm sure, like to be directed. They like to be told what to do and to, collaborate and get into it and things like that. And then there are other actors that are just like, tell me where I'm starting, tell me where I'm going, and just, that's it.
Totally.
It's my thing.
Funny. It's so funny because I don't even say I'm improv. I am actually. And I've had some Martha Plimpton, who's a great actress, who was in My Life's a Turnaround, my first movie.
Yeah.
She was in a scene and I was like, I didn't even really, because I wrote it and I was writing stuff that I say, I didn't even like kind of look at the script.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was improvising. I thought I was saying what was in the script. And she would say, what you said wasn't as funny as what you wrote. Say exactly what you wrote.
Right.
And that was really smart. But conversely, I've said to some actors, like in a tiny bit, I'll just say, listen, just vamp here for like 3 lines.
Right.
They'd be like, and they get so terrified.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Yes.
I said, well, just continue on in the scene as you would if the scene was over. Just keep talking.
Right.
And they can't do it. Like they're like, whoa. I'm not an improv. I learn my lines and I say them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm always kind of astonished. I don't know if you've run into that with directing.
No, it's funny. I mean, obviously I've only directed 2 films, co-directed. I have to give shout out to my buddy.
Not only, listen, take only out of there.
Okay.
Anyone,
That
I wish
is
all
true.
critics,
That is true.
all critics should fucking have to make a 10-minute film. And then they would be so nice to filmmakers.
It's true. It's true.
Anyway.
And you put the 2 films together because they are connected. I could say I've made a feature in a roundabout
Every
way.
film.
But look, it's fair enough, and I do appreciate that. It's a learning process, and everybody who worked on these 2 films, I would say, were great. That was one of the things that we really appreciated, is that because, as you know, it's not always like that. But even on the 2 films, every actor had a different process, and you could tell that, from actor to actor. And it's just learning how to, mesh with their style and because like I said, some like to be really involved, like tell me what we're doing, what I'm doing. And then others are just like, tell me just where I'm beginning and where I'm ending, and just let me do it. Some people are like that. And so, and as an actor, I think too, I mean, again, I've been, a voice actor for 21 years now. But I started as an on-camera actor. And so I do understand that process. And I think that I find it's funny. I don't know if you're like this, but I find as a director, I'm very much acting as I'm directing. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to watch that line reading because I don't want to do that because even as a voice actor, I don't like to be line read unless I say, listen, I don't know what the hell you're trying to say. Just tell me how to say it. Right, exactly. But unless I say that, I don't like to be, told. So I'm always mindful of that. I definitely don't want to line read for the actor unless they tell me. But I find that I'm very, and I've noticed, I get really into it. Like I get really into the, I'm not just do this. I'm really into the moment and almost acting with them as we're talking about it. You know what I mean? And so, and some people really like that. Some actors really love that. They love a director who's really hands-on and committed and passionate. And then there are some that just, whoa, hey, hang on, so it's interesting. I mean, you have more, experience than I do, so I'm sure you've met a lot of that, more than I have. But it's fascinating when you get to work with many different kinds of people, many different styles, and yeah, it's interesting, very interesting. A couple more for you here, Eric. Frank says, any animals that aren't in the comic that you wanted in there?
It's another good question. We have I gave, again, a lot of latitude to the artist. I didn't dictate what every character was going to be.
Yeah.
So we have, the only thing that I sort of did say was, let's have the dogs be the more privileged in this society.
Right.
Let's have the gazelles be what would be considered the minority.
Right.
And then beyond that, I let it go. I think I had a kind of a hipster monkey character who, and then I have, but then he has a couple polar bears. We have a giraffe. I didn't want to hit it too on the head,
Right.
like the animal tester scientists
Right.
are neither bunnies nor rats.
Right.
The ones that we primarily test on, they're monkeys.
Right.
So I didn't want to necessarily hit it too hard on the head.
Yeah.
I love elephants, are some of my favorite. Probably one of my favorite animals are elephants.
Yeah.
Again, it is kind of interesting because the artist was like, look, what are we doing with proportion here? Like,
Right.
are you is an elephant proportional to a chihuahua?
Right.
In the frame? Because if we are,
yes,
it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So we morph a little bit. I make the elephant a little smaller, the chihuahua a little bigger.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's only one episode, and there's only there's a finite amount of characters.
Right.
So we have a rhinoceros, which I love as a teacher.
That's great.
So no, to this point, I think all the animals that are in there are great. But
well, and as we move along too, I mean, it can become almost I mean, I don't want to get off on this. It'd be a whole other thing. But in terms of like things that are going on in society now, and as we continue to evolve, you could almost poke fun of certain things as we go along. Not poke fun, but sort of do that role reversal through the different lens and other things that continue to happen, which is interesting too. But yeah, and then Warren Armour just says, I hope you kick it out of the park. Best of luck, Eric.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate that support. I think that gets out in the universe, and
for sure.
And I think that starting a wildfire, like that, again, that's why I appreciate you having me on, Dave, because I think that everything helps, and little brush fires.
That's it. Everything helps. So yeah, no, I appreciate you being on, Eric. Stick around and we'll have more of a formal goodbye.
Okay.
But yeah, that's going to do it, folks, for this episode of McRae Live. I really appreciate you all tuning in. The link is in the chat. Again, if you know somebody who this is up, right up their alley, or you have a brother or sister, a mother or father, an uncle and aunt who's a big comic book person, and they like this kind of thing, feel free to pass along the link and have them check it out. I know that Eric would really appreciate it. I'd appreciate it as well, because I think this thing has a lot of great potential to become not only a series, but even a comic book franchise. I mean, there's some really cool things in here that I think in the right hands and for the right audience, it would work for sure. Folks, that's going to do it. Eric, again, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it. Any last things you'd like to say?
No, listen, I just really appreciate you guys, and the support means the world to me. I understand that taking your time and taking time of people to watch and listen, it's not a small thing, and it always resonates and means a lot to me. So I really appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you, Eric. All right, folks, have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk to you all soon. All righty. Cheers.